Hello everyone, this is Direwolf20, and welcome to episode 36 of Direwolf20's Let's Play Dyson Sphere series, where I just off-camera between episodes amped up titanium alloy production. I noticed my titanium alloy was low. I think I even commented on it a little bit over the last two episodes. Mostly as a result of a lot of the titanium alloy was dependent upon this iron node. Up until just a few minutes ago, the iron from that node was being smelted into steel that was needed for the titanium alloys. I've now refactored that, like I've done for so many other things, into an interstellar logistics station that just brings in steel, titanium, and sulfur? Yeah, sulfuric acid, and then exports titanium alloy, right? And set up what you can obviously see as a bunch of tier 2 smelters, because they are so much faster. And yeah, they draw a lot more power, but we're at the point where power is not as much of a problem for me. So I'm cool, right? I think we're good. I'm just kind of mostly keeping an eye on things at this point. Like, I think everything's pretty good. Believe it or not, I've been watching my iron, and I believe we're okay-ish on iron. Where's my iron maker? Hey, there you are. As you can see, we've now backstuffed on magnets, and we've are starting to backstuff on iron ingots. So that's good news. And even here, we're seeing a healthy amount of iron ingot backstuffage happening, so that's cool. Yeah, so overall, feeling pretty good about stuff and things. Obviously, we're going to want to keep an eye on that because we were pretty close there for a while. And if we take a peek at iron production here, we'll see that at this moment, we're producing less than we're consuming. So I don't actually know. Maybe that's on account of the fact that I'm burning through steel so much faster now. That's probably an assessment that's accurate, right? Because titanium was not asking for steel, and now it is. So we're probably burning through iron faster now than we were before. So we may, in fact, have more of a problem than I thought. That's definitely possible. It's definitely possible. What I'm thinking I might need to do is split this stuff out into its own logistic stations. Like, literally just have a logic station dedicated to making iron ingots, and that's it. Like, import a ton of iron ore and export a ton of ingots. End of story. But we'll have to I'll have to think about how I want to do that, right? Like, I like this setup as it sits right now. But clearly we are now choking on iron again because I just fixed something that uses iron, and it now needs more iron. Now, in fairness, titanium alloys are going to backstuff shortly, so that might make for a little bit of a better thing. But we need to plan for the future, right? We need to plan ahead. We need to be prepared for the fact that that's going to hurt soon. But before we, keep refactoring and keep refactoring and keep refactoring, one thing that I'd really like to do is look at a research that we did last episode. It is now complete, the Dirac inversion mechanism, which allows us to convert in a particle collider some antimatter. And I'm going to start researching controlled annihilation, which gives us access to antimatter fuel rods. And once I've got those done, I'm going to work on the artificial star, which is a power plant which will use antimatter fuel rods to generate power. And that'll be exciting for us. That'll be exciting for us. So with that said, let's go down to where we have our solar collector dudes. Now, where are they, per se? Now, before I tap into you guys too much, right, I don't necessarily want to start draining this power, but we've got a lot more power in our Dyson sphere that we're not tapping into yet. So what I think I'm going to do, believe it or not, is I'm going to try to copy and paste this whole setup one layer down. Now, I'm probably going to have a little bit of a problem with that because of collision, right? Which is not a huge shock to me. So let's start with this. Okay, we're going to want, a healthy amount of these. Now, what are the chances? Pretty darn close, actually. Let's get, we're going to need more steel to make that happen. we're going to need more magnetic rings, all the things. Doesn't hurt to grab a bunch when you know you're going to need a bunch. Okay. So let's, as best as we can, obviously. We're going to need those things. Those are one of the few things that I don't have set up right now in my stuffs. I really, really should. And solar sails is where that's made, because it's like solar sails needs it, and that's one of the few things that I don't have set up right now. I think I've got a chest for it at least, though. Yes. And they stack pretty high, so it's rare that I have to go replenish those. It's rare, but it's not completely uncommon. Okay. Now you're going to collide with another object. If I just skip that one, would that be too big of a deal? No, we should probably just put it in and deal with the fact that it's going to have to be off-centered a little bit. It's not the end of the world. Would that be cool? That could be cool. That's not what I meant to do. Is that good? Yeah, it looks pretty good. A little bit of manual connecting here, but that's okay. Alright, so now if I were to feed you guys... and configure this to be gravitons. Would you guys all get gravitons then? Let's just make sure that yes, you do all get gravitons. Yes, getting there, getting there. Sweet. Now, what I'm going to do now is convert you guys. Oh, look, you have to get some more. Well, I think that should be fine. I'm going to convert you guys to photon generation now. Boom. Look how much megawattage it takes to make photons. It's a lot. It's a lot. Critical photon. We got our first one. How exciting is that? Yeah, that's a significant amount, right? So we went from drawing 15 megawatts of power to 120 megawatts of power. And now we are overtaxing our system. We have now officially begun to overtax our system. Hey, everybody rejoice, for we have done something pretty fun. Now, eventually these guys will probably all be photon creators, okay? And your job will be to store critical photons, which is our first new item in a while now. Here they are, critical photons. Hooray! It's being made. Now, I'm obviously planning a little bit for the future with this whole critical photon setup. Because as you can see, it significantly increases the cost of things, right? So I'm going to run this over to here and right up into here. Cool. All right, so step one of mega power needs has begun. It has officially begun, folks. We are now creating critical photons, our very first bit. So what we've done is we've just converted our ray receivers to make critical photons instead of power. So rather than turning all the energy we're getting from the sun into power directly, we are now, and I mean, obviously we're still getting lots of power from the sun because most of these guys are still in power generation mode. But as our Dyson sphere gets bigger and bigger and better and better, and speaking of making the Dyson sphere bigger and bigger and better and better, let's complete out the connection so that we have a full bit of stuff here. So you to you to you to you. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and fill them in. Boom, 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 boom. Cool. And we should have a bunch of rockets on its way up. Nice. Cool. So, basically speaking, we will now be producing critical photons in some of these things. Controlled annihilation reaction. Yay! That research is complete. That's exciting. So what can we do with critical photons, I hear you asking? And it is a very good question. I am not going to lie. And we're going to explain, as we speak right now, what that's all about. So critical photons, per the research that we just did, gives us access to mass energy storage recipe. So let's take a look. It is in a particle collider. So do we have any particle colliders handy? We don't, but we're going to get a couple. Okay. And I'm going to have to think about how we want to handle this setup. Oh, wow. Are we hurting on power? Oh, satisfaction's low? Oh, because we're launching rockets. We're launching rockets. What I might do, let's see, are you guys all critical? You're not critical photon, right? Your power? Yeah, our strength's at 0% up here. That's another reason that we're having some power problems. It should sort itself out. If it becomes a problem after this short period of time where it's night here for us, we'll have to adjust a little bit and maybe turn one of these photons back into a maker of energy. But everything should be coming back online in a moment now. You can see it. That's kind of cool, actually, that you can see the sun starting to hit these guys again and starting to produce power once more. So yeah, our power should start getting stronger, and then we'll be all right again. See? Dyson sphere status, it's starting to come back up. All right, and then that means that you should start being more stable in terms of power. In theory. Like I said, we're gonna solve those problems in a moment. So this dude is now capable of making something new. This stuff. So what it can do is take the critical photon and split it into 2 hydrogen, I want to say, and 2 antimatter. So the 2 critical photons become 2 hydrogen and 2 antimatter. Or to say another way, 1 critical photon becomes 1 hydrogen and 1 antimatter. Okay? From there, what we can do with the antimatter is we can start looking at making annihilation constraint spheres. That's another thing we're going to have to make. But the antimatter itself can be made into... We might have to wait for this research to complete. No. It can be made into antimatter fuel rods, which needs 12 antimatter, 12 hydrogen, 1 of those containment things, and 1 titanium alloy. Okay? So your initial thought might be like, oh, I have to void this hydrogen. No, you actually need the hydrogen that you get out of this. So we're going to start under the assumption that we're going to need to, let's start with you coming out of here, critical photons, but I'm not going to specify critical photons yet as the export, but we're going to plan for the future where we might want to have more of this happening. Artificial star research complete, yay. We'll talk about that in a minute, because that's a really cool thing to have. So critical photons we're going to start making with miniature particle colliders. Okay. And basically you're going to be making this dude, and you're going to import that, and then on the outside edge I'm going to do this and this. And your job will be antimatter on the outer belt and hydrogen on the inner belt. Okay. Now, we want to... Do I not have any lack of items? Oh, I'm out of that. All right, I should go get some. All right, mission accomplished. One thing I want to note, by the way, is don't forget these guys are not at 100% continuous receiving yet. So once they hit 100% continuous receiving, we'll see what the actual power draw is going to be. I think it's going to be... It might be 147. It's possible. So we're not even close. Remember how much we said, like, we have way too much energy being produced in our Dyson sphere? All of a sudden, we don't have anywhere near enough. Especially if we want to start making more critical photons over here. But anyway, let's be prepared. So, in order to make antimatter fuel rods, which is this, we're going to need to bring in titanium alloys, and we're going to have to craft annihilation constraint spheres. Okay? So what I think I'll do is have a interstellar logistics, right? The one that has 5 slots. And we're going to bring in titanium, particle containers, and orange chips. And then we will send out antimatter fuel rods and make them available. Cool? So we'll be making the two things, this thing, the constraint sphere. All right, so let's do that. Okay. So what we're going to want to do, and this will probably need to be retweaked at some point, but we'll get there. Okay, but you're going to bring in titanium fuel rods, particles, and what did I say? Orange processors, and then you're going to send out antimatter fuel rods. Okay, we're going to craft these things, but we don't need them for anything but antimatter fuel rods, so I'm not going to store them in the system. We're not going to put them in the logistics system. Cool. So from here, we basically just want to, first off, start with, and it looks like I'm going to need more belts, so I might as well snag some of those before I run low. I'm so bad at remembering where my belts are relatively to everything else. I want to say it's around here. There you are. Cool. So how about first things first will be, I'm going to export this. And this. Okay. And you're going to only need about 1,000 of each thing for now. I don't think you need to be too crazy. But we'll store up to 10,000 antimatter fuel rods. That's fine. One other note is these guys do need antimatter, and they don't need hydrogen. So once we get to this point, we're going to have to start storing our antimatter separately and dealing with the excess hydrogen that comes as a result of it. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So this is going to be a little bit of a large footprint now that I'm thinking about it, but basically what I want to do is have this area up here handle the creation of all the things we need to make this. And then we're going to plan for this guy to, like, eventually be, like, a lot more, right, as a potential. And in fact, just to make sure that we're not wasting critical photons, we're going to keep this short until we get to the point where we need a lot more. But for now, let's plan this out, right? So you're just going to do this to here, and you're going to do this to here, okay? And then along the bottom of that, and possibly along the top as well, we're going to produce a lot of stuff, right? So you in, and then I'm going to want the output to be along here. Okay, and then that can be copied quite a significant number of times. And that should be cool. And you're making these dudes, okay? And then once you've got these dudes, this guy's gonna eventually, again, planning for the future when we might want a lot more of these. We're just gonna have a bunch of extra belts here, basically. And you're gonna come down and probably just I'm thinking this through real quick. Right, because you're going to store antimatter fuel rods. You're going to make antimatter fuel rods. But as a matter of fact, you're going to go in there because we wanted to bring these out. And it gets a little squirrely because of the planet, but that should be fine. Okay. So then what you're going to make is antimatter fuel rods like this. And I'm going to just remove you for a sec. But you're going to be importing, importing, exporting, importing, importing. Okay. And then you can get copied a couple times. And I guess we'll be prepared for a pretty large environment. Cool? Does that sound like a plan? It feels like I'm wasting a lot of space with this, but I'm planning for a lot more particle colliders. Because remember how big these buildings are, right? These are big buildings. So once you see, like, you know, the space usage here, you're like, oh, right, yeah, no, that makes sense. Good job, Dyer, planning ahead. At least I assume that's what you're saying. Cool? That looks good to me. Yeah? And then we can expand as needed, right? This... If we needed to, could wind up being something like, well, you're kind of in the way. Can I sneak this here, maybe? Yeah, it seems like not a bad place. So this... Why do you exist? Oh, you're the output of this. Then why did I do this line? Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. Right? But eventually this could come into here. Yeah, that looks a little bit nicer to me. If we need to expand these guys. And if we had some on top, we could simply, you know, loop it around. Right? And then yeah, that looks pretty good. That looks pretty good to me. And we can expand this out in plenty of room that way before we run into any kind of problems. So, should we get this going? I don't see why not. So you're going to be local demand, local demand, local demand. Let's not forget to throw a few of these guys in here just to help augment that. Bada bing, bada boom. Are we low on orange chips? Come on. I think the answer is yes. And then you can start exporting your critical photons for us. Cool. Antimatter! Hooray! Cool? So you guys are going to start accepting your antimatter. Once you guys get all your stuff here, it looks like we have a few orange processors en route, so that's nice at least. They should be getting here shortly. Ish. At some point, maybe. And then once they get here, this crafting will start. It'll start handling it there, and then this thing will be getting made. And then you guys need to... You're going to store your antimatter fuel rods directly in here. And that should all work out nicely. So here goes. See it processing? Nice. Now, I didn't math out how many of these we need. But it looks like we're making 4.5 per minute. And you guys down here need about 3.8 per minute. So it's about a 1-to-1. A little less than a 1-to-1. But it's close. So what I might wind up doing is making 2 more of these. Lack of item. Ripperoni. It's alright, we can get some. What don't I have? I don't have these, right? That fits. That should be pretty darn good, right? And now we're getting antimatter? Yeah, we're getting antimatter fuel rods. Booyah. Booyah. That's what's up. That is hyper cool as to what's up. Now, in addition to this, what I think would be smart is let's store some antimatter here. Because remember I said we're gonna cross this bridge when we get to it? The next thing we're gonna unlock here is white research cubes, and that needs just antimatter. So let's start researching that so we can get ready to create white research cubes. We're gonna need antimatter though. So what we're gonna need to do is convert, wow, we already burned through all our critical photons. Holy cow. That is hilarious. Let's store a few of these. Where did those critical photons go? Because I feel like they should be in my inventory and I'm not seeing them. Am I crazy? Oh, there they are. I got 50 of them. Nice. Works for me. Alright, so what I'm going to do then is have a couple of you guys. And I think for now I'm only going to store like 500 of these. Okay? Just going to store 500 of these. But we're going to have 2 miniature particle colliders, whose job it will be to do something like this. Okay? So you're going to export critical, or you're going to export antimatter and hydrogen, like that. And then you're going to import critical photons. Cool. So your job will be this. I'm going to put some of these in here for the moment. Okay? So see how the antimatter is now being stored in here. We'll start with just one of these. Now, obviously, we're going to start backstuffing on hydrogen, so guess what we're going to do to deal with that? Just burn it up in a thermal plant. Cool? And that stuff burns so darn fast. Do we even need that anymore? We'll just throw down a couple of these just to be safe, to make sure that we burn through it all fast enough. But everybody should be groovy. Yeah, I think we're fine. Sweet. So clearly we need to get more power out of our Dyson sphere. It's a problem for another time. I'm feeling good about this. I'm feeling really good about this, as a matter of fact. So now we're storing antimatter. We can augment the antimatter storage bit as needed. Okay? And that works for me. You know what I'm going to do? I'm probably just going to throw down the other one here just to have it all built and ready. Cool? And now we're making antimatter fuel rods. We have 108 of them already. Cool beans. They stack up to 30, I just learned. Cool. And guess where we can put them? Right in here. You guessed correctly. Let's go for a little flight and see how good they are. So let's fly up to our sun real fast. You know what I'm going to do? Warp around for a second. Drain a bunch of energy. I just want to drain all my power. Maybe not all my power, but enough to be like, yeah, I drained a lot of power. Alright, so right now we have a net gain of fuel generation 9.6 megawatts. 9.6 megawatts of power generation. Let's do this. Let's wait for the fuel thingy that we have now to burn out. right? And see how long it takes for this to burn out? If you thought this took a while, wait till you see antimatter. All right, 9.6 megawatts will now become 14.4 megawatts. So what's that, a 50% increase? Not bad at all. Wow, that's pretty good. And it lasts a really long time. Okay. Antimatter fuel, 7.2 gigajoules of power. Is that the right metric that I just read out? Compared to 600 megajoules. So like 10 times? What is going on with my controls right now? 10 times as much power? And that's pretty awesome. And it lasts a really long time. So antimatter is great. Now, in addition to that, if we started having power problems on the planet, that's a thing we could solve as well, courtesy of the artificial suns. So let's check that out. Under power production, I believe it is now. Or no, is it under Dyson Sphere? It is under Dyson Sphere. This dude, artificial suns. It needs 10 of these things. So I might... Remember when I said I don't need that many of those? Yeah, I might have lied a little bit. I don't need this. I don't need them to autocraft because these. I'm not going to be making that many of them. I mean, I'm going to be making a lot of them. I'm not. I mean, eventually, I'm going to make a lot of them. But you know, you'll see what I mean. Right now, I don't need a lot, and I definitely don't need to automate them. I don't need 100 of those. I don't think I'll ever need 100 of those. I'm still going to hang on to like a few of these fuel rods in like an emergency kind of reserve, in case I'm like out on a remote planet and run out of antimatter and oh yeah, I'm in trouble. I have some extra deuterium fuel rods, happy to go. All right, let's check these bad boys out. Now, what's probably going to eventually happen, I'm not going to set this out for what it's going to be yet, but what's going to eventually happen is we're going to want to place down our artificial suns. Now, artificial suns do connect up with these guys. Okay. And this guy accepts antimatter as a fuel source. So right now our satisfaction's really just fine. We are not at all struggling for power, even a little bit. That said, I could start launching more rockets if I wanted to. And that might be a cool thing to do, because our rockets are pretty much done out here. And like I said before, we're going to need a lot more power. Does that feel good? Yeah, that looks cool, right? And here come the rockets. Nice. So, still not even breaking a sweat. But when we do get to the point where we're breaking a sweat, what we can do is drop some antimatter in this thing. Now, I'm going to be a little conservative about it. I don't want to go too crazy, but I'm going to drop one in there and just show you guys what this thing's all about. So he's capable of producing, I want to say 75 megawatts? 72 megawatts. Boom. Artificial star. How cool does it look, by the way? It legit looks like an artificial star, right? So if you look at how much we're currently demanding in power, we're around 85, and this produces about 72. So one artificial star produces about a tenth of the power needs that we have. So in theory, we could run our entire planet right now on about 11 of these comfortably, and be fine. Now that said, there's definitely some things to be said for our situation that we find ourselves in. So number one, we're going to need more power. Number two, we could start running off artificial suns rather than ray receivers, right? We could start transitioning away from ray receivers to critical photons. Now, obviously, I've got way more ray receivers than I will need, right? I think I could probably about 20, 15 to 20-ish, right? Because this guy at 100% is draining 211 megawatts of power. So about 10, let's say 11 or 12 of these on photon generation mode would be enough to drain everything out of our Dyson sphere as it currently sits. How bananas is that? Pretty bananas. But we're going to let this chill for now, because I don't want to rock the boat too hard. Clearly, this is not necessary to be automated, which is why I haven't started exporting antimatter fuel rods, but we will store them, both for me, the player, Mecha, and also for the future state when we start getting crazier and crazier in terms of power demands. Cool? So that's that. So, to no one's great surprise, we are definitely still choking on iron a little bit. We're going to have to deal with this next episode, probably. How we're going to deal with it is something I don't quite know yet. What I'll probably wind up doing is just setting up another one of these pretty nearby, whose job will only be to make iron ingots. And what I might wind up doing is converting these guys down here to be magnet makers. That might be the more efficient route to go. So we would remove... Well, no, because we need iron. We need the steel here, and we need the gears here. So we can't just do magnet makers. What I might do is turn this into a storage guy. So instead of local supply, he'll be local storage. And his job will only be to locally store. If I set this to local storage, he'll no longer be stolen from by the logistics drones. He'll only store iron for the purposes of making steel and gears. So this guy will sort of become a different beast. What I might wind up instead doing, there's so many, there's many different ways to skin this cat, right? Probably the most efficient and the smartest way to do it would be to separate away the steel and gear production from this location. Because what I could do then, follow my logic here, we could get rid of these two things and turn them into smelters for the iron. And that would amp up iron production here. And then we would fly this iron to another location whose job would be to make steel and gears, and we could do that with a planetary logistics, right? Import iron ingots, export steel and gears. That might not be a bad route to go. I might think about that next episode. For now, Del20 signing off. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Take it easy.